It's a joy and an honor to be here with all of you and be here with my friend and mentor, the president of Juilliard. Thank you so much for being here and
My pleasure,
talking with
Michael.
us.
My pleasure.
Many people may know the name Juilliard, but not everyone knows that Juilliard is more than a music school. What are the other misconceptions about the place?
Well, of course, we have a very robust program in drama and in dance that was started in 1951, drama in 1968. We offer degrees in a bachelor's, master's, and in the doctorate. And we have an extensive series of performances for over 700 concerts per year. So it's a very, very robust environment in New York City with Juilliard. And we also have a pre-college program that involves about 300 students between the ages of 8 and 18 on Saturdays, and a adult education program. So it's a very, very lively environment for all of the arts.
And a robust international alumni network here, which I don't know if you wanted to share a little bit about who these people are on the screen, Joseph.
Well, this is just a snapshot of some prominent alums, and you'll see in dance Robert Battle, who oversees the Alvin Ailey program, and Pina Bausch, Lara Lubovitch, Paul Taylor. But in drama, some of our best-known individuals are out of the drama program, including Kevin Spacey and Philippa Sue, who's a co-star in Hamilton, but Laura Linney, many, many others. Robin Williams was an alum of Juilliard. And then, of course, in music, which is our foundation discipline that started in 1905, Renee Fleming, Alan Gilbert, Itzhak Perlman, Wynton Marsalis, many, many others. So we're very, very proud of our alumni, of course.
Last fall, you announced that you would be stepping down as the president of Juilliard in June of 2018. By then, you will have been in office for 34 years, presiding over one of the most dynamic eras in the school's history. In what ways has Juilliard changed since your arrival in 1984?
Well, in '84, Juilliard was a fantastic place, but it was essentially a commuter school. Faculty, students, administrators arrived, did their work, and then left. And in 1990, we created a residence hall that began the development of a sense of community beyond the lessons and the performances. And this has had a big impact on how the school operates now. In addition to a residence hall, we've developed a very, very active community outreach program where we ask our young artists to go to hospitals, hospices, nursing homes, aid centers, and to work with the individuals there in a non-traditional setting, essentially leaving their own comfort zone in order to present their art in ways that they usually don't work in that way. And it's been revelatory for them to do it that way. We have started a jazz program in 2001 and our historical performance program in 2009, very, very popular programs. And in general, we have tried to broaden our curriculum to respond to the needs of the 21st century, specifically the needs of technology, and of course entrepreneurship, which Michael was very involved with, and the Alan D. Marks Center for Career Services and Entrepreneurship, where we are asking our students now to think out of the box, to be creative about how they use their art in various vehicles, and that's been very, very successful. And Michael, in fact, oversees the program for our first-time college students.
Yeah, we just finished the first run of our course, Essentials of Entrepreneurship in the Arts, which was a 7-week course that featured keynote speakers, and Joseph was our first keynote speaker. That was really to inspire the students to begin thinking about their careers in more innovative and less conventional ways. The center also has financial support for both current students and graduates, so that they can pursue entrepreneurial initiatives. So hopefully we're helping our students in innovative ways there.
And I would just add there that the nature of becoming a young artist is very much dependent on development of technique, but technique is only a vehicle through which one goes across the bridge to artistry and communication. And often in that process of developing a very, very abstract series of talents, these young people lose their sense of who they are and don't realize that they have many opportunities out there, not just as being the principal bassoon of a large orchestra, but they could be a teacher, an administrator, a chamber player, or all of the above. So that's what I think the center is all about, getting them to open up their minds a little bit.
Joseph is also a bassoonist, by the way, so
right.
ergo the mention. In addition to expanding Juilliard's activities within the school and the community, you are credited with making the Juilliard experience accessible to a wider global audience. Why is this important?
Well, you know, Michael, Juilliard has always been an international institution. On average, 30% of our students are from outside of the United States. But we weren't a global institution. And what the difference is, as far as I'm concerned, is that we were very New York-centric. We really did not reach out to the world in the way we're doing it now, both digitally and in hard and fast buildings and programs. And I think that our world in 2017 is a global world, whether we like it or not. And it was important, I thought, that Juilliard share the values that were involved with the creation of our art forms with a much larger audience. And so that's why we are doing the global projects that we're undertaking.
And we'll share with the audience here some of those global initiatives, and we'll talk about them, but some of them featured are like the Tianjin Juilliard School, which we'll talk about momentarily, as well as Juilliard Open Classroom, which just yesterday you announced the launch of Juilliard Open Classroom, which is a suite of online courses for artists and arts lovers of all abilities. This is an initiative that is particularly close to my heart. I'm the professor for the first of these courses to be launched, the piano course. But let's talk a little bit about why Juilliard is bringing its educational expertise online. Juilliard for all, if you will.
Well, of course, this conference is all about technology and delivery systems. And we at Juilliard believe deeply that what we're involved with in the development of young artists for new generations is an essential part of our responsibility to not only American society, but global society. And what better way than using digital resources to get those values and those practices out? Now, how to do it is a complicated issue. And we're going to show you a little bit of some of our approaches. And as Michael said, Michael is the professor having to do with our keyboard skills program. But what this really allows us to do is to take Juilliard standards and Juilliard expectations for the early learner, whether a young adult or even children, and to make this available whether you're in Austin, Texas, or in New York, or in Seoul, Korea. And the power of this enormous network I think has been untapped, certainly by Juilliard, and we're now heavily into that process.
Let me tell you a little bit about some of the courses that we have. There are 4 in the initial offering. We have, of course, the piano course that I'm teaching, but we also have a music theory course taught by the chair of our music theory department at Juilliard, Stephen Lates. I think that's going to be an incredible course. We also have a course that sort of walks you through how to listen to the orchestra that's led by the chair of our music history department, Michael Griffel, but uses content from the Berlin Philharmonic and their digital concert hall. And then finally, we have a course on performance skills led by our performance psychologist, Noah Kagayama at Juilliard. Let me show you a video about some of these courses.
I think comment I want to make about both of these, just little short intros, is that in this effort, we're not pushing so-called classical music, quote unquote. We're pushing the discipline, the intricacy, the subtlety of what it is to make music, to understand music. So, and Michael's going to talk about his course, but on the music theory course, which we just saw, as you can see, that this young man is not playing classical guitar necessarily, but the syntax, the grammar of music, the harmony, the rhythms, the melody, these are the building blocks of what it's all about to make music. And whether it's rap or rhythm and blues or Beethoven, that basic foundation is always there. And that's the idea we're trying to get across. But you're now teaching piano in this way, and this has been an adjustment for you. But what has been the result?
Sure. Well, taking the process of learning piano into the digital realm has been quite an experience for us. We determined that we should have as multimodal and immersive of an experience as we possibly could when we designed the course. And I think we have quite a multimodal approach. We have engaging video content that's based on specific musical elements that we determined could be translatable in the digital space. And then course learners are placed into a digital practice group where they can upload performances of pieces that they've been working on, comment on their peers' performances using the language that's in the course, and receive feedback from course fellows, all of whom are excellent, top-notch recent graduates from Juilliard. We also have master classes in the course, as well as what we call expert insight videos, which offer deeper perspectives, you might say, for the various musical elements. Course learners are also welcomed to an exclusive live stream event that's straight from Juilliard.
But you're not directly, in other words, teaching the student in a real-time basis.
Correct.
Yeah.
What happens, we use this tool called Voicethread, and that's how we create these digital practice groups. And what people will do is after they've learned a passage of a particular piece, and by the way, the course is geared towards intermediate piano students, and it's targeted specifically towards music of the classical era. So think Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven. And they'll upload performances, sometimes just snippets of a piece or sometimes an entire piece, and then they can receive comment from their peers. So it's not in real time, but it is a course that is, we say instructor paced, meaning that it's a 6-week course that is unfolded on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm. So we're just starting that, and we're looking forward to seeing the results. And
yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah, right. So far, so good. We've had a sort of in-house soft launch that has just started, and so far, within just 2 or 3 weeks, we've had incredibly positive feedback on the course. So I think people are liking it.
Good news.
Speaking of going global, you have been spearheading plans for the Tianjin Juilliard School, which is scheduled to open in 2019. Why China, and why now?
This is a significant venture for Juilliard. We've never had a branch campus any place. And once again, it's this idea that we wanted to realize of making our institution a more global institution, really reaching out to the rest of the world and to seeing how we could benefit our colleagues there and at the same time bring forward the values that we have at Juilliard. China, of course, is a country that has enormous respect for Western classical music. The conservative estimate for the number of children who study piano is in the range of 50 million children in China, and I've heard higher numbers as well. But we're not doing necessarily just that type of instruction. We're actually going to have a school that's offering a master's degree in 3 areas of orchestral training, chamber music, and vocal coaching, all areas that are needed in China. And we've had great partners there. It's based in the city of Tianjin, which is a small hamlet of 14 million people just southeast of Beijing. And we We'll have a state-of-the-art building there. And the image you're looking at right now on the screen is the official announcement of our Tianjin Juilliard School. And the lady to my left is the First Lady of China, Madame Pang, and Bruce Kovner, our chair, and then President Xu to the left, who is the president of the Tianjin Conservatory of Music. This was a very, very big occasion, not only for Juilliard, but quite honestly for China, because Madame Pang rarely participates in these type of events.
What made her participate in this one in particular? Why is she interested in the music?
Madame Pang is a very accomplished singer. In some ways, one would call her a folk singer, the Joan Baez of China. And she no longer sings publicly because she's married to her husband, and I guess that he didn't want her to sing publicly. But in any case, she's a very accomplished singer, and much more popular than her husband probably was until he became president. This picture here, we decided with her agreement for her to do a mini master class at the opening. And so she's talking to one of our sopranos, Liv Redpath, about a song that Liv actually sang, a Chinese folk song that she learned, and including singing it in Mandarin. And it was really just one of these magical moments that happens once in a while, where all the barriers of protocol are dropped, and human beings interact with each other. And Madame Pang, the artist that she is and teacher, just telling how to sing this folk song. It was a very touching experience, and we continue to be very close to her, and we're appreciative of her support.
I remember how gracious she was in that masterclass.
Yes, she really was. Yeah.
Well, Juilliard has developed an innovative arts education curriculum for students in the K-12 space called the Juilliard Nord Anglia Performing Arts Program. Can you tell us a little bit about it and why early arts education is important to you? This is another one of our big, more global projects.
This morning at 11 o'clock in this room, Carmen Farina, the chancellor of the Department of Education of the City of New York, spoke. And there are 1.1 million children in that school system. And I'm a product of that school system. I grew up in Queens, New York, and went from first grade to 12th grade through the system, all public. And in my time, in the 50s and the early 60s, in the mid-60s, it was a very, very robust musical environment with thousands and thousands of children seriously studying music. Sadly, that went away in the 1970s with one of the financial crises of that time. And one of the dreams that I have had in the work I've been doing over the years is trying to bring back some semblance of that system to not only New York, but around the United States and, in fact, around the world. And we had the good fortune to, in our global outreach, to become connected with Nord Anglia Education, which is a Hong Kong-based K through 12 educational system that provides private school education to close to 30,000 children in 15 countries. And we are providing the drama, dance, and music components of their curriculum. And we've come up with a digital package, essentially, of resources that we hope someday, once we launch them all, to share at no cost with public school systems. And just a tiny bit about the philosophy. I have always been centered on the idea that instead of trying to learn 150 works, great works of the masters, let's see if our students can learn 10 works deeply. And so that's what we do as a foundation here, number one. We've picked 10 works, whether it's The Rite of Spring or a jazz work or a non-Western work or a Mozart opera. And the children actually take deep dives into these works with the guidance of the teachers. And you'll see in the snippet that we're going to show you, fifth graders in a school in Chicago dancing to a section of the Rite of Spring. And actually, the original choreography that goes back to the Diaghilev Ballet Russe. So it's quite extraordinary that these young people who had never heard Stravinsky before embraced it so much that they were even able to replicate the choreography. And the second side that I thought was absolutely essential is that children learn to read music and become somewhat keyboard knowledgeable. And it's Michael Shinn who's developed that. Because parents often ask me, well, in this music program, will my children be able to read music? And often what happens is that these are music appreciation programs that talk about the music, but you don't actually play the music. In this program, the children at a very early age, you'll see one other shot in a kindergarten group, where they're working on keyboard skills and reading music.
Part of the reason for the keyboard, I mean, one of the pitches I've made about that in the past is just that if you're thinking about reading music, if you take the grand staff, which is what we use at the piano, you have a treble clef and a bass clef. If you take that score and you turn it 90 degrees, it's literally a map, a beautiful map of the keyboard. And it's a way of really physically connecting the abstract action of reading music with what you're doing at an instrument. So it can really help with not only note learning, but also learning basic elements of music theory. And so it's been, I think, a really fantastic guiding principle in that whole collaboration.
And I guess keyboards now, electronic keyboards are good, and good touch, good sound,
yeah,
and continue to be less expensive.
That's exactly right.
So,
shall we share the snippet?
Yeah, let's. This is a little bit about the Nord Anglia program. Juilliard and this school and a lot of other schools, Nord Anglia schools around the world, are working together to introduce you to the joys of music and dance and drama. This whole collaboration with Nord Anglia is so exciting for us at Juilliard because it brings Juilliard traditions and approaches to the teaching of drama, dance, and music to the K-12 environment.
The Juilliard Nord Anglia Performing Arts program really shares the same common belief about the power of the performing arts.
It's going back to what we want our children to be. So what we want our children to be is to be those innovative thinkers, those explorers, those creative thinkers.
Andrew Fitzmaurice, the CEO, is very much hands-on. He loves education. When he talks to us as principals, it's all about the education of the children. So Juilliard is a great thing that he has brought into the schools because he cares about the students and their development.
For us, the performing arts are the creative key to unlocking our students' imagination. This curriculum will help our students to achieve discipline, problem solving, and collaboration.
Nice to see you.
Raphael.
Nice to see you.
This is
Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you. It's a good part of your education to listen to good music. It's very, very good.
This collaboration allows our alumni to make guest appearances throughout the system.
The feedback has been amazing from all the parents. And I think the real thing that stood out for them was the repertoire that we were covering.
Here's the Rite of Spring
and the fact that they're dancing to the
about.
Rite of Spring. Those children would not have accessed that particular piece of music in that particular way if it hadn't have been for the collaboration. I'm sure of that.
Their faces was in awe of what was going on.
Some of the smaller children join in, you know, and that's just embodying the power of what's happening.
This partnership is going to provide an enhanced professional development experience to all of our teachers.
Feeling part of the Juilliard community, seeing our peripatetic staff, seeing the Juilliard team and all our students together in one room really shows that this is a community and that we are working together on these amazing ideas.
We're incredibly excited to be able to launch this, and certainly it's something that we feel will further enhance a Nord Anglia education for every single one of our students.
Our responsibility as artists is to make the larger world understand why the arts are an important part of our social context. What's also interesting about this association with Nord Anglia is that we now have the opportunity to have physical presence, so to speak, in their various schools, all around the world. So they have schools in China, of course, but also in the Mideast, in the United States, in Europe. And this allows our alumni and our faculty to go to these various places and present their art. So it's a win-win for us.
I've visited a handful of the schools in a variety of contexts, both in Asia and Europe and in the United States. And one of the things that strikes me about Nord Anglia is that they already have a very good, well, they already have a strong music program. What we're doing is inserting, we call them teachable moments, into their curriculum to help the teachers, to help support the teachers with amplifying different concepts in different ways, in very creative ways, I'd add. Joseph, I want to circle back to what you said a minute ago, just starting about talking about the New York City public schools. We have some initiatives at Juilliard that are geared towards supporting education. I'm thinking of the Morse Fellowship and the Music Advancement Program. I'm curious to hear you talk a little bit more about that and what some future direction we can have in supporting public music's education.
Well, I've always felt that young artists have to have a sense of mission to use their art to make a difference in communities large and small around the world. And we found that the best way to do that was to develop conduits through which they could work in schools, they could work in hospitals and nursing homes, as I already said. And so the programs that Michael is mentioning are programs where, in one case, the Morse Fellowships, we have students who we prepare who actually teach on a weekly basis in New York City schools. And then we have other programs like the Music Advancement Program, where we bring in 100 children from the New York City schools on Saturday when we have our pre-college operational. Our pre-college program is an audition-based program, but MAP is based on potential and desire to grow. And these children have a head start, so to speak, and we then hope that they'll either move on to our pre-college or other similar programs around New York City.
Right. Yeah. Your concept of the artist as citizen, the title of your collection of speeches exhorting performing artists to become informed, articulate, and involved arts advocates in the world community, has had ripple effects in arts education, not only at Juilliard, but around the country and the world. Can you share some examples of this concept at work?
Well, it goes along with what I was just saying about incentivizing students, Juilliard students, to go out into the community. But I wanted a larger philosophy as well. In other words, I wanted students and artists to understand that they have a responsibility off stage, that they need to have presence in changing how the arts are perceived in our society. And so all of the programs that we have done that I already spoke of are working at school. But what has been most gratifying for me is that many of our alumni are creating programs that they're following through that are based on this point of view. And then, in fact, some of whom I mentored when they were at school. And one of them, I think if we have a slide is this of Adam? Adam Driver, you may know, is a newly minted movie star, more or less, was a former Marine, went to Juilliard in our drama division, and is now the new villain in Star Wars films. He's the Kylo Ren, as you see. You can't see him there, but you can see him standing amongst his soldier friends at a base. And he created something called Arts in the Armed Forces. And this started at Juilliard when he actually did ancient Greek plays for veterans. He's changed the format now with his wife, Joanne Tucker. And he actually presents contemporary American plays all around the world at American Armed Forces bases. And it's been a very, very impactful experience for the soldiers who have this. And it's been a very important part of Adam's and Joanne's life. And I've been very gratified to see him do this and take time from his super busy schedule to really dedicate himself to this.
His wife, Joanne Tucker, who you mentioned, is also a Juilliard graduate as well.
In drama.
Helping with
in drama. Mm-hmm. And then another program is Sing for Hope. Two sopranos, Camille Zamora and Monica Eunice, have put together over many years now a program where singers go around the United States and work and present in hospitals, hospices once again. And they also had a very interesting project in New York City. If any of you are from New York, you might have experienced it. They commissioned, I think it was 50 to 100 pianos to be painted by visual artists in various modes and colors. And then they placed these pianos during the summer in parks, plazas, venues, all around Manhattan. And people would just come by and play the piano whenever they wanted to. So, and they've finally taken those pianos and they are works of art now. And they've been curating those for other purposes. So it's another case in point of being innovative, thinking out of the box, being entrepreneurial, and making a difference through your art.
In the prologue to The Artist as Citizen, your collection of essays that's so wonderful, you write that artists of the 21st century must rededicate themselves to a broader professional agenda that reaches beyond what has been expected of them in an earlier time. And I'd like to also quote from a recent press release about it. You say, "At Juilliard, we prepare students for a career in the arts while encouraging active participation in political, economic, and social discourse. It is the responsibility of all artist citizens to use their unique talents and perspectives to effect positive change in our schools, institutions, and the world. It may very well be that the arts and artists that provide the passion and focus needed to energize this nation as we move into the next millennium." How is Juilliard educating the artists, leaders, and citizens the world needs today?
As I said earlier, the education of the performing artist is a complicated process that involves development of extraordinary technique and then understanding of repertoire and communications and artistry. However, within that context, it's still important that artists from Juilliard and other places like Juilliard understand how our governmental system works, understand how our economy works, how our politics work, who our representatives are and why and what they do. And The Artist as Citizen, the book, was written in 2005 or published in 2005. In 2017, I have to say that there's even greater resonance to some of the ideas because of the current environment politically. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the level of civility, the level of nuance, the level of empathy that is now being perceived within our nation. And for artists, I have seen a re-energized element of interest in taking works of art and taking their messages and trying to make a difference in the political sphere. I'll just tell one story, but there are many, many. The French playwright Ionesco in 1943 wrote a play called Rhinoceros while he was living in Paris. And of course, at that time, Paris was occupied by the Nazis. And it's a story, simplistically, I'll present it to you, of individuals who, throughout the course of the play, continue to grow rhinoceros horns until practically the whole cast has a rhinoceros horn except one of the characters. And of course, the symbolism of all this is obvious. But the director who was doing the play told me that before November 8th, there was a certain perception of what that play was all about. After November 8th and the results of the election, there was a different perception. And and those perceptions were myriad, by the way. It wasn't necessarily pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It was a different perception of that work of art. And I'm finding now that our young artists are having a sense that when they do a King Lear or a Macbeth, or experience a play of August Wilson, or for that matter, see Beethoven's Fidelio, these works of art have different messages today than they did at an earlier time. And I think that that power is only a good thing for the young artists who are working at Juilliard and eventually going out into the field.
Great. Well, perhaps we should open up for some questions from the audience. I know, let's flip ahead here. I know that we have Slido running. And if anyone has any questions in the audience you'd like to just voice your own, there's a microphone right in the middle. You're welcome to come on up. Can you talk about the most unconventional jobs Juilliard graduates secure, not stars?
Well, of course, we have plenty of our graduates who have left the arts and have gone into medicine and the law, architecture, business, of course, who've gotten MBAs. So one often asks me, well, if you've worked so hard to be a violinist, then what happens when you become an attorney? And some of the students who have gone into those fields I've mentored. And the interesting thing that they invariably say consistently is that the discipline I learned at Juilliard, the need to be focused, to work, to practice, to deliver at certain times, to work under pressure, are all skill sets that I now find myself as an attorney or as a physician or as a business person. And often in business, when you hear about what are the needs of a profession, you ask for somebody that's creative, that has an imagination, that's disciplined, who works hard, who can continue to focus on a project. And that's exactly what the process of becoming an artist is all about as well. I'm troubled often by sometimes within academia, certainly outside of academia, that the arts are not perceived as intellectually rigorous, that we're essentially a soft operation. The economics are hard, rigorous intellectual pursuits, as we've seen in the wonderfully correct predictions that they had back in 2008. So, but I'm not bitter. It's okay. So I often make the case that, and in fact, when I was a junior administrator at Yale, I had a meeting to persuade or try to persuade the dean of Yale College at the time to give academic credit for musical instruction for students who were considered at a graduate level, but still at Yale College as undergraduates. And he just said, well, this is performance. And the innuendo was, this is, it's all intuitive. This is not an intellectual, rational experience. It's intuitive. And I came back to him and I said, well, why do you give credit for computer science? Because all they're doing is just touching a keyboard. And of course, then he realized that, the answer is that when you touch a piano keyboard and you're playing Beethoven, your intellect is kicking in as well. This is not intuitive. This is not something that, ignores a host of traditions, et cetera. So that's always been my concern, that the arts are seen as soft. And I'm going way afield from the first question, but I also think, sadly, within our political domain right now, Democrat or Republican, there hasn't been a U.S. president who has supported the arts at any level with any seriousness of funding, at least, since, quite ironically, Richard Nixon in the 60s. So that's a problem. That's a problem as far as I'm concerned.
For those who think that music is soft, they should come take a music theory course with Steve Lates at Juilliard. I mean,
for ear training,
it's just a ridiculous notion. Love to hear your thoughts on the role of arts education in shaping great global citizens, particularly in light of shrinking budgets in this area.
the role of arts education in shaping global citizens. Well, I think it was announced at the top of the show. In another life, I went to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, which was international relations at the time, was the Cold War and ideological conflict with communism. Of course, that's all gone. But I bring this up because just last week, I did a dialogue conversation, public conversation with the dean, whose name is Jim Stavridis, who's a former four-star admiral and was supreme commander of NATO. And we talked exactly about the issue of cultural diplomacy, soft power, so to speak, and the arts. And our conclusion was that, especially in a time of really non-ideological presence in our world, that is to say that that communism is not necessarily the ideological force that it was in the 20th century, and democracy as well, but rather a series of activities that are non-ideological. So you could perhaps say that ISIS is an anarchist activity, but that's not really an ideology. So the point is that even General Mattis or others in the military, and certainly an admiral like Jim Stavridis, say that they have seen over and over again that, yes, it's important to have American might in terms of the strength of our defense forces, of course. But ultimately, in this political environment globally, it is our values, it is the arts, it is our belief in certain structures of how one interacts with other people, which are the most powerful elements of turning individuals in a pro-American way. And I think ultimately any foreign policy with any administration is that countries respect the United States and respect our values. And regrettably, that has been a problem for many years. The State Department has not had strong cultural programs, and the individuals who are foreign service officers and cultural attachés, with certain exceptions, are not versed in the arts enough to really use them to forward American interests globally. That's a long answer to that question.
I see a question here that I'd like to at least start and then pass off to you.
Yeah.
Can online music education, like the open classes, replace the direct feedback an instructor offers or merely supplement it? It depends on what your goals are. If your goals are to become a professional musician and come to Juilliard to study, then it might supplement your study, but it certainly would not replace the direct interaction that is really necessary, I think, for private study of an individual instrument. So if you're a pianist wanting to come to the Juilliard School and then become a professional pianist, taking a course like we have might help. For sure, because you'll do a deep dive into a lot of the concepts, things like dynamic contrast and phrasing as it's influenced from the Italian language. But you should still retain a private instructor as a high school student to help you prepare for that Juilliard education. However, if you're an adult who is just interested in kind of trying to get back into it, if you studied maybe as a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old and you want to come back to it and you want to just see what you can do a little bit, it's a great opportunity to take one of these online courses. Perhaps that's what you would do for the 6-week period of time, and it might inspire you then to pursue more robust studies, whether that's in a class setting or in a private one-on-one setting is up to you. But I think it really depends on your perspective and your goals.
I mean, I think this is an excellent question that Martin has given, and it goes back to something that we're not going to do with online teaching, and that is we're not offering academic credit or a degree because we don't feel, as Michael was saying, that we actually could give the full experience of what it is to intensely study music at a professional level. If you watch our teachers teach in the studio, the subtlety and the nuance that they reach out for is really quite remarkable. And often, if you don't have that one-on-one experience, you can't have that that level of detail. So that's the answer to that. Yeah.
By the way, for the online courses that we're offering, you receive a statement of accomplishment from the Juilliard School once you've completed all the requirements of the class.
I think we have a question from the room.
There's this huge world, there's a huge divide between popular culture and popular technological culture. And I'm just curious about your observations about how the school may or may not.
Well, to a very great degree, and thank you for your question. To a great degree, we're already addressing it in the sense that all of our composers, for example, are required to become quite conversant with digital techniques in scoring for film, for example. What we are finding, though, is it's not only our composers, but our performers that are quick to use those technological skills. And so we have a whole center for innovation in the arts, we call it, that is digitally driven to a very great degree. And we didn't discuss it, but one manifestation of that is a lot of multidisciplinary work, where we take acoustical as well as digital sound and bring it together with film and live presentations for actors, dancers, and musicians. But the larger question that fascinates me that you've brought up is technology within the context of traditions and how to address that. And I would contend that music has been dealing with technology for centuries. It's just a different type of technology. If you take, for example, the concept of the harpsichord, that was a technological wonder at its time, and the strings of a harpsichord are plucked. And then the instrument started evolving, technology went on, and we went to the forte piano, where the string began to be hit instead of plucked, had a different sound. And then, of course, it evolved to the mammoth B52 of all pianos, the Steinway D, and it's a new technology with different sound. But within that context, the thing that's been constant, I think, is the human experience and the human mind and human imagination and creativity that's developed work that is long-standing. Now, I'm not going to get into the business of, pop music versus classical music versus that's nobody can resolve that, and there's no need to ask the question. There's an enormous power in pop music, and there are obviously millions of people who relate very, very well to it, and a much smaller percentage that actually listen to classical music, so-called classical music, on a regular basis. But the consistency, I think, is, and this goes back to this theory course, for example, whether it's rap or R&B or rock or Beethoven, there's rhythm, there's pitch, there's harmony, there's melody. They're all the questions of syntax and the grammar of music. And what you do with that language is what makes it special. And so if you view yourself as a pop artist and you have deep roots in this language, you can develop work that is long-lasting and important. Now, what is art? And I'm not going to get into the businesses of that. What is the difference between art and entertainment? I actually teach a course called American Society in the Arts. And we try to grapple with defining what art is and what entertainment is. And we always fail because there's no real answer to it. And especially in this environment, there's no value to try to put in priority order. One has to choose with what one wants. But I think what I'm getting at, and what I hope some of these programs will get at, is there is a commonality. So take that tradition. I would hope don't ignore the tradition. I mean, one of the sadnesses, I think, with K through 12 education that we've lost is that we've lost generations now of adults who have never been introduced to the serious study of music or dance or drama. Never. And so to expect them to have an epiphany when they're 54 and the children are out of the house and they're going to buy a subscription to the Los Angeles Philharmonic is ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But we're reaping what we have sown now because audiences are older and there is a greater divide between that so-called classical or concert music and pop. So, you know, I don't have any quick answers. I can only say that what I believe in and what I believe the values of Juilliard are involved with are values that should be sustained. And we're trying our hardest to make sure that they're sustained into the future.
Wonderful and complex answer, and I wanted to pick up on one thing from what you said earlier in that answer when you were talking about the CIA, the Center for Innovation in the Arts, and what it's doing. I have a dear friend who's worked at Juilliard, been at Juilliard, was a student there, and was with the CIA, did a lot of things there for quite some time, Anthony Barfield. And Anthony is a wonderful classical composer, but he's also moving into the hip-hop world. And I had a conversation with him recently, and I've had these conversations with others as well, that his classical training, the robust nature of his classical training and technical training has helped him immensely in fusing together his classical works with his more hip-hop style. And he feels that the artistry that he's able to create with that combination would never have happened had he not had that rigorous training at Juilliard.
I don't know if any of you had the chance to see Hamilton this morning with Chancellor Farina. She said that 11,000 New York City public schools students were given tickets to Hamilton. So now I know why it's so difficult to get a ticket. But but if you've seen Hamilton, you know, it's not just hip hop. You know, it's every type of music that Miranda was able to merge into a very, very unique and new vehicle. That's what art's all about. And Lin-Manuel Miranda is a trained musician. He didn't, you know, he's not improvising here. Mm-hmm. He knows what's going on in harmony and melody. And I think that's the type of work that's so exciting. And it's so wonderful for me to see a larger public embrace that type of music.
What do you hope your successor can do that was not completed during your presidency? Okay,
right, sure. Well, I've always said my greatest failure, I could never field a chorus at the Juilliard School. All of our singers are opera soloists, so they never want to sing together. And I'd always joke that singing in a chorus is bad for the voice unless you're paid. So, so that was a failure. But slightly less facetiously, I had always hoped that I would be able to, with my colleagues, to realize a tuition-free Juilliard. And we were doing pretty well until 2008, and then we got knocked back like everybody else did. And we've come back strong. But I worry about debt for our young artists. And you know, they're going into a field that, first of all, doesn't really guarantee employment. I'm not sure what field does anymore, but and certainly not high compensation. So debt is really the kiss of death. There was a presentation at 2 here that I was listening to about liberal arts, and a gentleman came up to the microphone and said he was a graduate of Kenyon College, and he had a college debt of $200,000. Well, my goodness, you know, that is a really weighty debt. And you know, institutions do not have 100% control over how that debt is brought on, by the way. Parents and students can independently take on the debt. It doesn't have to be administered through the school. But nevertheless, that was something I did want to do. And I'm hoping that my successor will be successful at realizing that. But I'm still working in my last 16 months to try to come up with a plan where we'll make certain areas free. Right now, our doctoral program is free. Our historical performance program is free. Our artist diploma in opera studies is free. You know, so there are programs. We have a program that our chair created, Bruce Kovner, where there are 52 fellowships. That's full tuition, room and board, and a small stipend. And so, you know, it is happening, but I'd like it to be 100%.
Well, in the last minute, could you perhaps answer the question, what will Juilliard look like then in 10 to 20 years? How different will it be?
Well, obviously I don't know, but I certainly hope that it's an institution that is conversant and responds to the future needs of the profession. Going back to the gentleman's question, to continue traditions that I think are extremely important in the history of humanity, but at the same time, modifying those traditions, understanding those traditions, adapting those traditions, so that the work of the graduates of the Juilliard School will be compelling to audiences in the time ahead. And then also, as I said, I hope, continuing a tradition of having a sense of responsibility off stage and asking our young people to not only be artists, but to be leaders in what they do and to make a difference in our society. And there's a feeling of optimism on my part because of not only the incredible talent of the young people I see every day, but the idealism of these young people. This is and I think it's in college in general these days. College-age students are a very idealistic bunch. When I grew up in the 60s in the Vietnam War, I would not call us idealists exactly. I don't know what I would call us, but we weren't idealists because we were pushed down by all of the pressure of being drafted into that war. This is a different group of young people, and therefore I have a sense of optimism for the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you for your good work.
Enjoying talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.